Hi, everyone, and welcome. This is Elaine Davidson of Beacon Lane Consulting. We are really excited to be hosting today's webinar about diversity recruiting, very specifically and intentionally called Why Words Matter. And when you hear from our guest speaker, Rob Kelley, who I will introduce in just a few minutes, you will hear how Why Words Matter applies to so much more than just your job descriptions. So this webinar is quite timely. The number of stories that we're seeing about corporate commitment to diversity continues to be on the rise. And unfortunately, I guess more often than not, the press that we see is about missteps, stumbles, and gaps. And in fact, a few of the companies that Rob is going to mention today have been in the press, but that is not going to be our focus. Our focus is purely data-driven and is in the spirit of learning and helping you make small changes that collectively can make a big impact. So there are always two sides to the equation, and on the upside or on the positive side, with all of the press that we see comes a heightened call to action. And fortunately, as a community of talent acquisition and HR leaders, we can help move the needle. There are a few examples that actually come to mind, and if you aren't familiar, they might be something that you want to take a closer look at. One of them is called CEO Action. CEO Action is an organization that is CEO focused, and it's driven basically to drive diversity initiatives that started about a year ago. And while it started with 150 CEOs a year ago, it has really grown quite significantly. And today is up to around 450 CEOs actively participating. Another one that comes to mind is Paradigm for Parity, which is a very powerful coalition and even what I like to consider a movement that's focused on closing the gender gap in corporate leadership. It's one that Beacon Lane is proud to be a sponsor of, and I highly recommend you taking a look at that one. And there are so many more. A quick Google search can help you put you on the path to finding one that you might be interested in joining. All right, so back to Why Words Matter. Rob Kelley is going to show you how things like your job descriptions and your diversity statements might actually be turning diverse candidates away, certainly leading to a reaction that you were not intending for. Before I turn it over to Rob, those of you who know Beacon Lane or who know OnGig know that we tend to be quite conversational and extremely transparent. We love to hear from our audience. We love to engage. So if you have questions, please hit the Q&A button and we will do our best to answer the questions. We will hold those questions till the end of the webinar so that we can keep moving at a good pace and get as many questions in as possible. Also, you will be looking at some numbers and data throughout this presentation, so it's best viewed in full screen. Okay, so with that, I'd like to introduce Rob Kelley, CEO and co-founder of OnGig. Rob is a 4-time CEO and author of the book An Enlightened Entrepreneur. He actually began his career quite young as a journalist and has had the honor of interviewing some business titans such as Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. And today, as you all know now, he reinvents job descriptions with OnGig. Rob is my go-to guy for recruiting tech questions and much, much more. If I had to bottom line it, Rob is truly one of the smartest, kindest, and coolest guys that we work with in the industry. So without further ado, I want to get us started and hand it over to you, Rob.
Wow, what a great intro. I am super excited to be here. Thank you, Elaine and Beacon Lane, for inviting me and for organizing. One of the things I love about Elaine and Beacon Lane is they've got 3 qualities that I just love about any human, any business, and that is that they are unique, they are bold, and they are agile. And that's actually how we define the OnGig brand, and we just love to partner and hang around with folks who have those 3 qualities. So thank you very much, Elaine. Well, let's dive right in. So a couple things you're going to learn today. We're going to do a live analysis or show you just some recent analysis of Nike, Starbucks, and Coca-Cola, their job descriptions in particular. We're going to look at a theme throughout this is how to increase both recruiting women and underrepresented ethnicities. We're going to get into diversity and Eeo statements, recruiting media, some other diversity recruiting widgets. And then finally, at the end, if you stick with us, there's a nice giveaway. It's normally worth about $7,500 that you get just for attending. It's a thank you to Elaine and Beacon Lane for sharing this with their community. Anyone else who found this webinar and is investing your valuable time, I think you might be interested in this at the end. So a little bit about a story where this started for me, at least. Back in 2016, we had an insurance company, talent acquisition leader, come to me and say, hey, Rob, we need more women, specifically in customer service. And we need more applicants. We need more hires of women. We've got certain goals. And so we worked on their job pages here at OnGig to help them out. And we were real happy with the results. It ended up that we 4x'd the applications and hires of customer service reps for this insurance company. And at the same time, hence the image here of all the nice boats out there, at the same time, they came back to us and really surprised us and said, you know what, not only did your work help 4x hiring of women, but it also 4x'd the hiring of underrepresented ethnicities. And that we hadn't focused on at all. It was just pure luck. We went back and really dissected what happened. And really it was that we implemented a number of practices that both helped attract women and really attracted everyone, including underrepresented ethnicities. So a rising tide will lift all boats is a common theme. And we're going to share those tips, how we did that throughout this presentation. First off, couple definitions. I don't normally like to start off with, defining things here, but this is such a new world, diversity and diverse recruiting, that, I think it's worth mentioning just kind of our take and our perspective on it. So for us, diversity means, everyone. It means being inclusive of whoever you are. So these top two, women and underrepresented ethnicities, I've already mentioned. Obviously a very important part of many of your goals. But also there's plenty of other different types of folks who make for great candidates. And if you're truly being inclusive, you're going to want to look at everyone, 100%. This is a great quote from the CEO at Carnival Corp, the cruise business, Arnold Donald. And he says, if you have different people aligned around a common objective, they will out-solution, i.e. outperform, a homogenous group almost every time. And he said, that's real. So getting into the why of this, I think that was a great why answer to why this is important. And also a little bit on the definition, right? The opposite of homogenous here is going to outperform. That's why we're doing this. So first off, where do you start? We're going to cover, as Elaine mentioned, a few things. One is job descriptions. We're going to get into diversity and Eeo statements. We're also going to get into some of what I call diversity recruiting widgets, some other just helpful tools that we found were effective in diversity recruiting. Specifically with job descriptions, we found there's three big levers, major levers. A lot of folks focus on gender bias, very important, we agree. But there's two others here. One is positive sentiment, the use of positive and negative language in your job descriptions. And finally, there's readability. How readable is the job description and your job opportunity? And we'll show you examples of this, but is it in plain English? Is it simple? Is it concise? And you'll see why this is super important to look at that as well as the other two here. So Starbucks. Here's an analysis of the gender neutrality of some of Starbucks job descriptions. What we're doing here is OnGig software is analyzing the percentage of words that appeal to men versus the percentage of words that appeal to women. So you'll notice on the left-hand side here that Starbucks has got some great, gender neutral job descriptions in the 50 to 52%, truly, almost exactly gender neutral here. The red icon means it is slightly more appealing to men. The green icon means slightly more appealing to women. And you'll see that, Starbucks has done their work here. They're doing fantastic. Just like every other company, of course, they've got a few jobs that also are not as gender neutral. And this is part of where you need to start to see where the bodies are buried. Where do you begin? So using some text analysis tools, and we can talk more about this in a bit, and some options for you, vital just to see where to start here on the gender neutrality. Examples of masculine versus feminine words here on the left-hand side: aggressive, force, strength, manpower, literally has the word man in it, right? And on the right-hand side, collaborates, support, resilient, relationships, understanding, words that tend to attract women. And again, we're generalizing here. We always got to be careful. There are certainly men who are going to find who are collaborative, right, and are into relationships. And there certainly are women who have plenty of strength and are aggressive and competitive. But in a general, when you are grouping these things, and in marketing, we call them cohorts, you do want to focus on what differences different audiences have. And certainly we're finding that there are certain words that attract men more than women and vice versa. Let's look at positive sentiments. Now we're looking at Coca-Cola's job descriptions here. And they've got some great positivity scores on many of their jobs in the 90 to 95%. We'll tell you later what we recommend. This is looking at the percentage of words that they use and how positive those words are. So certain words are positive, certain are negative. We'll show you here in the next slide. And of course, like anyone else, they've got some jobs that need a bit more of a boost in the positive sentiment. So again, where to start here, you want to look through and do some text analysis. There's plenty of great tools out there to see what your positive sentiment in job descriptions is. Here's some examples on the positive side, words like dynamic and holistic and drive, opportunity, excellence, elevate. I'm starting to think of Beacon Lane here with some of these words, in addition to the three I started off with. On the negative side, these, by the way, every one of these words, just like the masculine and feminine I should have mentioned, every one of these words comes from a Fortune 100 company's job descriptions. So I didn't make these up. These were found by OnGig software in Fortune 100 companies' job descriptions. So pretty scary to know that many of you might have words like conflicting, complex, misspelled, can't believe that. I'm gonna have to get on someone on my team about that one. Unpredictable, unpopular, odor, hazardous. Now you might say, hey, is that related to some specific job where maybe your legal team required you to have those words in it? Well, our first job is to tell you that a human will react negatively to these words in general that are on the right-hand side, and there are many more. You might have a good reason for it, but there might also be a good synonym or a reason to take them out and have a more positive sounding job description. Here's an example. So Fortune 100 company just added, at least that we saw somewhat recently, added in this sentence at the end of their job description. And salary and compensation is a very hot subject right now. There's many states, as you guys know, that are not allowing employers to ask candidates about how much money they make. And that's becoming a trend. It's getting more widespread. And so salary is important. And so this Fortune 100 company, at the end of their job description, they put in their name. They said, we will not discriminate or retaliate against applicants who inquire about, disclose, or discuss their compensation or that of other applicants. So, kudos to them for including something about this hot new topic, compensation. And we'll get more into salary at the end, another example of salary, and using it as leverage to attract more diversity. But notice this word retaliate. It is a negative word. It's a red flag word. And also notice it's a pretty long sentence here, right? Wouldn't this sentence on the right probably be treated by candidates a little bit better? We welcome you to inquire about your compensation and that of other applicants. So do away with a negative word. Also shorten the sentence. We'll get more into this in a second as it relates to readability. And little things like this can really improve your chances with recruiting and attract a diverse workplace. So third up, we covered gender bias or neutrality first, and then positive sentiment. Now we're on to readability. So how readable are your job descriptions? We're looking at some from UBS. Here they've got some highly readable jobs here on the left-hand side, and like anyone else, they've got their work, some areas that they've got to improve on the readability. And let us show you what we mean by readability. Here's just an example. One thing is grade level. So what grade level, using the US school system, what grade level are your job descriptions being written at? Well, chances are they're probably at the 11th grade level. That's about the average in OnGig's experience analyzing major companies out there. This would be tens of thousands of job descriptions that we've analyzed. So 11.2 grade, okay, well, you might say, hey, we're trying to, attract high school graduates, college graduates, and then some. But it turns out that the best writers in the world, the most readable writing in the world and content is actually in the 3rd grade to 8th grade level. And we recommend you be at the 8th grade level or lower where possible. So folks like To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, written at the 8th grade level. Warren Buffett writes at the 8th grade level. Harry Potter's written at the 7th grade level, down to Hemingway, Mark Twain, Apple advertisements, at least one we analyzed in a blog post. Just look it up on Gig Readability and you can see more details on this. Apple's ad was at the 3.5 grade level, writing an ad, and they know something about advertising, as you guys well know. So we'd recommend you get there at this 8th grade or lower level. And the reason is, it's counterintuitive, is that the best candidates are busy candidates, and they really appreciate you saving them the time and having something highly readable. Here's some readability scores for Nike, for instance. Again, they've got some great ones that are readable at the 9th grade level. This is way better than most employers, by the way. And then they've also got some that are at the 10th grade, 11th grade level that could use a little improvement, just like most of you, I imagine. On to diversity statements. Here's one from T-Mobile, and we'll dissect this a little bit more in a moment. But again, where to start? We recommend you look at your diversity statement real closely. It probably doesn't look quite like this, and we'll get into kind of the benefits of this approach here in a moment. But what are the words used in it? How do you present it, and so forth? Same with the Eeo statement. Here's one from SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey is an equal opportunity employer who celebrate diversity and committed to creating an inclusive environment for all employees. Very straightforward and simple. I give this example both because it is concise, readable. We'll break it down a little bit more. And also, this is the company that Sheryl Sandberg's husband had founded and since passed away, so I believe Sheryl's a lot more involved in it. And also Serena Williams, the tennis star, joined their board of directors for diversity purposes, specifically to work on some diversity initiatives. That's her top priority over there at SurveyMonkey. So they're putting time into this. All right, on to recruiting media and some other diverse recruiting widgets that we'll recommend. Again, where to start? We recommend you take inventory of all your media that you use on your job advertising. What media are you using to communicate your diversity? Pictures, video, and so forth. All right, finally, let's talk about what you can do about all this. We just covered where you start, taking inventory. First off, there's some great free writing tools. Last I checked, free is still real good on Gig. We've got a free giveaway here at the end, but on Gig's solutions are paid. We're a for-profit business, as I believe Beacon Lane is too, although I know they help a lot of nonprofits. But free writing tools, we want to give you some free tips just in case budget's not there right now for you. There's some great tools out there. There's a tool called Hemingway app, real neat. You can paste in your text, get a quick readability score, grade level, like I'm talking about. Microsoft Word even. You have to dig in. We wrote about this again. If you just search Google on Gig and readability, you'll find some details about all this. Microsoft Word gives you some grade level stats and other readability, a little bit deep in their app, but it's in there. There's a site called Readability Formulas. another called Alchemy Text. And then finally, specifically for gender bias, there's a tool called Gender Decoder. And these are all completely free, all these 5 tools. Definitely encourage you to go try them out. And you might have to combine multiple ones of them and find the ones that fit for you. Here's some just tips, straightforward, on things that we recommend, some best practices. One is that in general, you should be at least 50% feminine, use of feminine words compared to masculine. We recommend in the 50 to 55% in general, especially if you're trying to attract more women, which almost all of our clients and employers we talk to are trying to attract more women, at least in part of their company. Even if they're doing okay in most of their company, they might need help in leadership or a specific department, as I mentioned with the insurance company earlier example. On the positivity, we recommend you have at least 95% of words that are known to be positive or negative should be positive. And you might ask, why is that not 100%, Rob? And the reason is, you might have your legal team or maybe your marketing team or others who have insisted that you use certain words in your job descriptions, and it might just be fixed. We recommend you push back on them with some alternatives and synonyms and so forth, but you should really be in that 95 to 100% range, and you'll be well above the industry average. Word count for job descriptions. We found 325 to 675 is a good range for most job descriptions. There are exceptions, by the way, to all these things, but for most, the best practice is 325 to 675 words per JD. Words per sentence, around 8 to 13. There are studies about this. Most of you probably have sentences that are in the 10 to 20 words per sentence average, just to show that there's probably room for about 50% improvement if you can get some better writers in there, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Average word length, 5 to 7 words per sentence. Average grade level, 8th grade or below. These are for words you can control. Again, going back to legal might require that you have something in your EEO statement. You just can't, you just can't change it. Your hands are tied. So, but for the words you can control, back to writing for at the Harry Potter level or at the Apple level, you want to be at 8th grade or lower. Even down to the syllable level, by the way, we recommend 1 to 2 syllable words where possible, and steer clear of 3+ syllable words unless you have to. So, for instance, the word requirement, 4 syllables, right? Well, the word need is a good synonym for that, 1 syllable. First off, it's shorter, easier to read. This adds up when you do this with 10 or 20 words per, that you apply this thinking to. And also, it turns out that, for instance, dyslexic folks and candidates, they have a challenge with multiple syllable words. And so they often are fantastic candidates. And many folks with disabilities often are the best candidates, including ADHD and others that were in that list that we showed earlier, can be fantastic candidates. In fact, the best, one of the most talented developers on OnGig's team has ADHD, and all these things apply. Being more concise and readable is very effective for those examples. Back to T-Mobile, a little bit more on details about why we thought that was a very effective diversity statement. One is that they're taking a Mad Men approach to this, which is they're using a headline and even a subheadline in their diversity statement. Now, you might have a diversity statement that's on your website like this, and then another on your job descriptions. Some employers are using something like this in the footer of every job page. Go see GoDaddy, for instance. I believe last we looked, every page on their career page has a diversity statement banner type ad that is very clear and well written, it stands out, and so forth. So a little bit of a Mad Men approach. They're taking, what I mean by that is an advertising approach. You're advertising your job, right? Even for diversity, these are job ads. Even if they're on your own site and you're not paying for them, your job descriptions are job ads, and any page on your career site is a marketing page advertising to a candidate. So They use a headline here, uniqueness is powerful. They use a subheadline, be yourself, we like it that way. And then finally here in the little text, if you can see it, is the actual diversity statement, if you call it that. But you know, the whole thing is really the diversity statement. The length, 23 words, one of the shortest we've seen. Again, short is better, less is more if you can say what you need to say. It's at the 7.7th grade reading level. Perfect, right? It's got positive words, powerful, spirit, commitment, experience. By the way, it doesn't have any negative words, we checked. Overall, just highly readable with positive sentiment, no gender bias words, no negative words, and so forth. Fantastic diversity statement. On to an EEO statement. Most of you have this in your job descriptions or somewhere on your website. On the left is what I'd call the kitchen sink EEO statement, and this is probably one of the most common EEO statements out there that you and other employers are using. Notice it's very long. It's got, I call it the kitchen sink because it mentions just about every person that they do not discriminate against: race, color, religion, sex, mental, sensory disability, and so forth. Long, long list. We'd call that in old school now EEO statement, kitchen sink. And the modern EEO statement, let's go back to SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey is an equal opportunity employer. Now, their attorneys probably told them they had to have that in there. That's for certain EEOC rules, and you know, there's some flexibility there, but to play it safe, saying you're an equal opportunity employer is a good idea for public companies and companies working with the government, employers, that is. Notice the next line, that we celebrate diversity and are committed to creating an inclusive environment for all employees. So instead of saying what they don't discriminate against, they just said they're inclusive, right? They're committed to being inclusive of everyone. Shorter, more readable, much better. All right, on to some other diversity recruiting widgets here. We recommend that you have a content management system, a CMS, for all of your recruiting media. So again, you might have it sitting in different places right now. You might have pictures and videos that help your diversity causes, but they're sitting on YouTube or they're on your career site. Maybe you have a couple on your job description if you're starting to get more modern. Maybe they're sitting on Facebook. Maybe they're on Instagram. Maybe they're on Glassdoor. We recommend you centralize them in one content management system. And there are plenty of good ones. OnGig's got one. You could also use a free one. WordPress is free to do. And there are other CMSs out there if you go search them. This allows you to centralize them so you can quickly find them. And also, if you put in some extra custom development, like OnGig's done for our clients, you can now drag and drop these pieces of media to your different job pages and your career pages. And real time, you can make a difference. So we have clients, for instance, we'll show you examples. We have clients who want to show that they're supportive of you know, a woman in pregnancy, right? So imagine showing on your job description, this is a job description, being able to show a picture that communicates that. Of course, you know, a picture speaks 1,000 words, right? Or perhaps you want to show that you're diverse in terms of your leadership and in the boardroom. Again, through media. It's another OnGig client just showing, again, they're able to do this real time. They could pick which jobs they want to communicate this recruiting media on. Of course, showing the culture, right? A full, larger team. And again, these are all examples on a job description that each one of these clients used their content management system to drag and drop the diversity recruiting media that they found effective or a priority onto any job page that they wanted or career page. Work from home is also what I'd call a diversity equalizer, meaning that if you've got work from home opportunities, you really want to shout it from the rafters because, you know, last I checked, my wife, for instance, you know, when she had our child, boy, she would have really found you a lot more attractive as an employer if you had the flexibility to work from home. Even shows me back there checking the fridge here. You know, this is, again, something that you should shout from the rafters and communicate through your job pages if you've got work from home jobs. Salary is an interesting one. We talked about earlier how, and this is again a rising tide that lifts all boats, is that salary is a hot topic. There are a lot of states now where you, the employer, cannot ask the candidate about their salary background. So at first, that's an obstacle, right? It's a new challenge. In fact, I'm a believer in top grading by Brad Smart out in Chicago, very effective tool used by GE and others. And I use it for my own interviewing for our team. And it used to be salary was a key thing you asked about. Now we've got to change this in these certain states. Well, it turns out you can flip this upside down, use it to your advantage. If you can include salary information on your job descriptions or anywhere on your career site, then what you're doing is you're leveling the playing field. You're empowering women, for instance, who traditionally are underpaid, as we all know, and you're showing them what the typical salaries are for positions at your business. You're now empowering them, which makes them feel better about your employer brand. Same with underrepresented ethnicities. They might feel like they're getting discriminated against and getting lower pay. Well, now you're empowering them with the dollars that at the end of the day, these folks are getting paid at your company. Now, this is from Glassdoor, for instance. There's plenty of other good third-party salary providers. And there's other reasons to do this, by the way. If you put up salary info on your job descriptions, and again, this is a widget through a content management system that you can easily drag and drop and do on all your pages. You don't have to do custom work. Just find a good content management system or a partner to do it. And you can now empower women and underrepresented ethnicities with this salary info on every one of your pages. And the other good part, the candidate's not going off to Glassdoor and these other places where they see your competitors. Finally, if you really want to upgrade your content, your text, and you don't have the internal resources, we'd recommend you use professional copywriters. So for instance, OnGig's got a team of copywriters who are happy to rewrite your job descriptions. There are plenty of great agencies out there, recruitment marketing agencies that I'm sure would be happy to talk this through with you. And if you don't have it internally, I would go and outsource this, partner with it, or hire freelancers yourself to do it. All right, finally, thanks for making this through. We're on to just this special offer. And just for investing this time, this valuable time you've got, and again, as a thank you to Elaine and Beacon Lane for organizing this, for inviting me to speak and share a couple stories here. What we wanted to do was, we mentioned a lot about text analysis of job descriptions. We showed you a few screenshots. As a thank you just for attending here today, we want to invite you to reach out. If you email me at robplusdiversity@ongig.com, and also feel free to mention this webinar, but that's our special tag here, so we'll know it's you. And the first 25 folks who reach out, we're happy to do a free text analysis diagnostic. This is normally something that would require a $7,500 investment or so, depending on the volume of jobs. And we're happy to do this for you just as a thank you for listening today, for hanging out, and look forward to staying in touch. And with that, I'm going to thank you again and just hand it back to Elaine.
Thank you, Rob. Such amazing, awesome information. We've got a host of questions coming in, so I'd like to move us right into a Q&A. First question, this is a good one. Is this using Textio in the background, or is this pure OnGig tools?
I love it. Starting off with a tough question with a competitor. Textio, for those who don't know, is another text analysis tool. It's a great tool based on artificial intelligence. OnGig's got some of that too. And it's a great other solution for you to go look at, to partner with. I highly recommend you look at it. And we've heard great things about folks using the product.
Thank you. All right, let's move to the next one. A job description overhaul sounds like a major undertaking. How long does it take to do in companies that you've worked with?
Well, the first question is what the scope is, right? So what we recommend, again, back to where do you begin, is you find where the bodies are buried. So the beauty of text analysis tools now out there like OnGig and Textio is that you can find out where you've got some blind spots, where you need some help. And it might be by departments. Customer service tech might need more help than sales, or vice versa. It might be by region. If you're global, it might be by country. even just domestically here in the States, might be by city, state. We even analyze it by recruiter, by the way. So we can tell you which recruiters need the most help with their job descriptions. Very useful. We've seen new recruiters come on who inherited a bunch of job descriptions that were, not written very well, and they needed more help than the more seasoned recruiters who are already on board. So, but back to answer your question, you could easily, so that's where to start first. In terms of how long, you could easily rewrite, 1,000+ job descriptions in a 12-month period with the right partner.
Great, thank you. Kind of a build on that is, how often do you recommend companies review their job descriptions?
What we find is most of our clients have a lot of job descriptions they reuse. So once you upgrade those and rewrite them, analyze the text, rewrite them for things like gender neutrality, positive sentiment, readability. Those are the big three we recommend. There's a lot of subsets underneath that, but those are the big three. And we recommend that once you've upgraded those, that's your first step. Go and upgrade those by using some text analysis tools to see where you're at. Maybe you're in good shape. Maybe you've got some great copywriters already who have been writing these for years. But if you're like most companies we work with and talk to, you've got some areas you could use some upgrading. Once you do that, then really it's a matter of what new jobs are coming in that you've created that you want to upgrade, rewrite as well. So I'd recommend first you upgrade, all of them, and then a monthly check of new jobs and seeing with the text analysis tools, how are these new jobs rewritten? Who wrote them? Maybe you've learned all the best practices already, and now hopefully you've become an expert. And these new ones you're rewriting, you're doing great internally. You don't need to go partner with anyone else. You've got your own system going. Or you're partnering with someone like OnGig or an agency.
Great, thank you. Okay, bunch more here. So we have jobs that are really the same position, but in different locations. Should we be varying the description based on geographic location?
Sometimes you should. We've got one client, for instance, who, even though it was for a customer service rep, a very important customer service rep position, a real driver for the organizations. And by the way, another tip is I always ask employers, which department is driving your organization? At Salesforce, it's sales. At Google, it's engineering. So, at Apple, it might be product and design. So that is an important thing just in general to always know and where to start, because you want to make sure those are looking real good. To answer your question on the location, for instance, this one company who needed to hire a bunch of customer service reps and increase diversity in those, it turns out that their customer rep position was almost identical in San Antonio, Texas, as it was in Miami, let's say. Except it turns out that working in the San Antonio office was a way different cultural experience in terms of just some perks and benefits. Miami was great too, but San Antonio had their own Starbucks internally, in their office building and a cool new gym and some other things like that. And so this client ended up including that as a difference in the job description. So maybe location is the same and your job descriptions are identical. Maybe your offices are very similar, but often the culture is different. And if you can mention that in the job description, that's really going to stand out to the candidate.
Yeah, I really like that, Rob. I feel like the more realistic of an experience you can relay in the job description, I think it just resonates a lot more with people who are reading it. Okay, how do you write a positive ad for a commission-based position?
Positive ad for a commission-based position. Well, the first thing I'd recommend is if it's a sales job, I would first look at what percentage of your team are men versus women. What we find is they're typically mostly men. There are exceptions. Depends kind of what world it's in, what industry it's in. But it's almost always a large percentage of men, somewhere in the 60-40 range, sometimes 70-30, 80-20, you name it. And so I always say to the head of sales, if I'm lucky enough to be speaking with the head of sales, because it's great. It's great to talk to talent acquisition, recruiting, and diversity folks. But once in a while, for all this, you got to talk to the business line heads and leaders. So when I talk to a head of sales, the first question I ask is, what percentage of your team are women? And he or she might say, well, 40%, 30%. Well, I'll say, last I checked, in your experience, are men better sales folks than women? And he or she will typically say, no, about the same. Studies have proven, by the way, they're about equal. Some studies show women have a slight edge, by the way. So then what I'll say is, well, do you realize then that you're probably not even getting at bats with some women? Because I bet your job descriptions for your sales positions, your commission-based positions, I bet you that they are gender biased towards men. And usually they are when we go and analyze the text with our software. And then, I say, so now if you want to upgrade your sales team, hire more women. And here's one way to do it. You've just gender neutralized your job descriptions. And that could be a game changer for a business. If you're a large business and can go from 60-40 men to 50-50, I mean, performance-wise, it's a complete game changer. We're talking about millions of dollars on the line. So that's one approach. That's sort of the core conversation I've got. And then one other tip, just as an aside in hiring sales folks, I found is you want to look for a combination of ego and empathy, and you need them both. You can't just have one. If you have high ego, then you've got a real knucklehead, someone who's just overly cocky. They've got to be empathetic too. But if you only have empathy and someone who just cares and wants to coddle the client or the prospect, then you've got just sort of Mother Teresa, right? You need to find that combo of high ego, high empathy combined is, in my experience, the best attributes of a sales superstar.
Great, thank you. Okay, next one here. Do you have any examples of how the work you've done with a client has changed candidate applications?
Yes, so it ranges. So we gave the example earlier of an insurance company coming to us and 4Xing the applications and hires of women and underrepresented ethnicities just by upgrading their job descriptions. Now, they rewrote their job descriptions completely, right? They used pros. They used our copywriting team at OnGig to do that. That's one set of numbers. We've got other numbers where the apply rate went way up across the board for rewriting job descriptions. We've also got other examples where some clients measure us by that they interview the hiring manager who has the newly written job descriptions, and they ask the hiring manager to rate the quality of applicants just in general, whatever scale they've got, 1 to 10 and so forth. And we've increased it there. And I could tell you again, a rising tide lifts all boats. If you can increase the gender, make it gender neutral, if you can increase the positive sentiment, and if you can make these job descriptions highly readable, you are going to see an uptick in quality applications, apply rates, every measurement that you probably use for diversity and beyond, if you can work on those 3 areas.
Great, thank you. A few more here. Hold on, let's see. Do you think it is just on the West Coast that gender neutral job descriptions are desirable, or is it across the country?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, sometimes, with the tech world and a lot of OnGig and other companies providing technology and software for this are often based here in the San Francisco Bay Area. But we've found no difference across the board domestically, and we're starting to expand globally. And we're not seeing any difference at all.
That's good. That's good to hear. Okay, so just for clarification, this is a question coming in. For those people who reached out for your offer, how long will it take for them to get their results on their analysis?
Great. Well, the first thing is there's a question of how many jobs you've got that you're putting in there. So I would definitely include a link to your jobs so we know the scope, right? And reminder, if I didn't say this earlier, we only do this for employers who give us a link to their own jobs. We're not going to do this for some other jobs or competitors' jobs. And our only ask is that you sit down with us on a virtual call, virtually sit down with us in a phone meeting where we share this together so that we know you're serious and that we're having a conversation about this. And the turnaround time could be, really matters how quickly you get in the queue. It could be as early as next week. And if a lot of folks sign up real quickly here, it could be a few weeks out. But I'm confident we could be doing this for you, providing it for you within the next 3 weeks.
Great. We're going to take one last question. Do you have any other tips on recruiting women?
Yes. So, there are a ton, but I think one real interesting one, and we're getting real into the details now, but I encourage you to try all these, and we try these and measure them, is HP years ago had a really fascinating internal study where they noticed that this was for promotions internally, but we found, as you folks in candidate mobility well know, that often the same rules applied to internal candidates as external candidates. What HP found internally was that men who were looking for a new job internally at HP would apply if they only met, even if they only met 40%, I believe the number was, only 40% of the requirements when they read a job description. Men would still apply if they saw that they met only 40%. Women, on the other hand, tended to, and I'm generalizing here, but women tended to apply to a job and a promotion only if they met 100% of the requirements. So again, another reminder just that these cohorts in marketing and men and women and folks in, of different backgrounds and so forth, there are nuances here, and sometimes there are real differences. So if you want to hire more women, for instance, I'd make sure that you really are rock solid on your requirements. And if it's not a hardcore requirement, say so. Put in softer language. Nice to have would be that you have this. But if you put in that you've got 6 hardcore must-have requirements, just know that many female applicants are going to skip it and not apply because they didn't feel like they met 100% of the requirements. And that's according to this HP internal study a few years back that you could go Google and see more details on.
Thank you. That is so fascinating. And I'm sitting here as you're saying that, thinking about people that we've worked with, and it really is true. So it's really a fascinating statistic and just data point.
Great questions, Elaine, by the way. This is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for joining. So thank you, Rob. Thank you to the OnGig team. I really encourage all of you to take Rob up on his offer. I know that when I was leading global recruiting teams, I would have jumped on this kind of an offer. It's an incredible opportunity. Definitely will help you take the conversation to the next level inside your organization. I also know that many of you are listening to this on a recording. I still encourage you to reach out to Rob and his team at OnGig. Knowing them, they will still be happy to help you. So that recording will be coming to you, for those who are live, that will be coming to you shortly. And please, again, reach out to Rob or to myself if you have any follow-up questions. And thank you again so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Elaine and Beacon Lane.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.